Okay, hello, Tom Maguire. So my top 5 best personal development books. So this is an update since the last one. I realised yesterday that I've been doing these reviews only for a year and a half, I think. July 2019, it looks as though my first review was. I'm quite surprised. I thought it was like 2 or 3 years I've been doing this for now, but no, not so long. So yeah, I've tried to keep this review as much about proper personal development books because I do tend sometimes to read other stuff that I consider to be personal development, and I'll review those as well. But for the top 5 books, I've kind of focused on proper personal development books that are supposed to be personal development. Although I do have one sort of wild card in there, but I think you'll appreciate it. Sorry, so bear with me on that one. Okay, there's a reason for putting that one in there. Yeah, so like I always say, I do these reviews for my kids to look back and sort of laugh at me and kind of decide whether they want to read some of the stuff that I've read or not. So I've got no reason to lie. No one's paying me anything. If they want to pay me, cool, no problem. But yeah, perfectly honest, you're not going to get any bullshit from me, basically. You're not going to get me telling you that since I started my personal development journey, I've had this magical experience where life has suddenly become absolutely amazing and all you've got to do is read books and you will be a successful multimillionaire, because it doesn't work like that. And Jim Rohn himself always said that reading isn't enough. Knowledge is one thing, but you actually have to take action. He said something different to that. I'll put it in afterwards, but it was something along those lines. You actually have to take action. It's no good having all this knowledge in your head. You actually have to do something with it. And I know that from having my own business and being a life coach, that actually you don't get anywhere until you actually do things. You actually have to push yourself and take chances and fail and stuff before you become successful. But I will say that reading books has made a huge difference to me. It's the main difference it's made to me is that I just absolutely love reading now. I just absolutely love learning. I'm enjoying the journey so much more than I ever used to in the past, and I have huge ambitious goals which I have no doubt that I'm going to achieve as long as I manage to stay alive, hopefully. But the point is, I'm enjoying the process. Like Gary Vee always says, I love the climb. I'm loving where I am now. I've only got 100 and something, 105, 106 subscribers at the minute. But I kind of love that, because in years to come, I'll look back and I'll think, those were the fun days. And they are. It's really cool. Setting up the camera, setting up the phone, and just getting it done is a good laugh. And it's interesting when I see people like stuff and commenting. And someone asked me to do this review, so I've decided to do it, and I think that's good. I enjoy it. So yeah, on with the reviews. The top 5 personal development books. The first one I've gone for is The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin. So it's called The Art of Learning: A Journey in the Pursuit of Excellence. I absolutely love this book. I think it's really quite unique. I didn't know anything about Josh Waitzkin before. Apparently there's been a film made about him based on his life, because he was a bit of a child chess prodigy. What's it called? Searching for Bobby Fischer, apparently. And that's based on his life. And it gets 100% from Rotten Tomatoes. So it might be worth a watch. I haven't watched it yet, but I will do at some point. And this book just gives a really sort of a great insight into the workings of his mind, and how he kind of, when he was growing up playing chess at a high level, how he felt when he was failing, how he felt when he was succeeding. Then he went on to do Tai Chi, to enter fighting tournaments and things. And he just basically talks about how he became in love with the process of learning and developing. And I just find that really interesting, because I think when it comes to personal development, that's what you have to develop. I think you can have all these goals, you can have these things that you want to achieve, but if you're hating what you're doing, or if you're just so impatient that you want to get there, then you're kind of failing already. You have to be the sort of person who loves the process, and that's kind of where I've got to in my life. I still have the goals, the things that I want to achieve. I think I always will have. It doesn't matter what goal you get to, you're always going to want to get to the next one afterwards. The only way to be happy is to enjoy the process and to enjoy the moment, basically. So that's what this book gave to me. So I highly recommend that one. Second one is going to be Curtis Jackson's Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter. Now, I wanted to include this one because I think this book is, although it kind of gets really highly rated, gets lots of good reviews and seems to be really popular, I think there are certain people who probably don't rate it too highly because they think, Curtis Jackson, 50 Cent, bit gimmicky, bit tacky, it's just because he's a big name, blah, blah, blah. But actually there is no denying how successful he is. He is hugely successful. He is hugely ambitious. He's a bit of a personal development guru, I think. Once you read his book or listen to his book, you'll realise that. He talks about his struggle growing up, his successes, his failures. He opens up, he's really vulnerable when he says about how he can't cope with his son and his sense of entitlement and his friends who have been self-entitled. And it's really interesting to hear him. It just seems like a real honest story. And I think if you're into personal development, you can learn a lot from him. And I think for young people in particular who kind of look up to people like Curtis Jackson, I think that's really important. I think he's quite a good, in this book at least, he's a good role model. Anyway, the stuff he says is very good advice, and it's really entertaining as well. I enjoyed reading it. It's really, really good. Highly recommend it. It definitely deserves to be in the top 5 as far as I'm concerned. And then we have Personality Isn't Permanent by Benjamin Hardy. This book, I was really surprised by this book. It sounds really silly, but the front cover looks a bit crap, I think. Yellow front cover with a pencil, just writing Personality Isn't Permanent. To me, it's a bit like a textbook, and I can't stand school type texty academic stuff. I can't stand it. That's why I love entrepreneurship. I love kind of the rage against the system sort of stuff. I can't stand all this need for sort of academic qualification and kind of approval from certain people and things. I just think I've got respect for the entrepreneur who just goes out and just does it and just proves that they can do it by getting results, basically. That's what I'm into. So Personality Isn't Permanent was right up my street because he basically kind of completely debunks all these personality tests that we've relied on for years. People get put in boxes right from primary school. Teachers tell us, you're an introvert or an extrovert, you're good at sport, you're not good at sport, you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that, whatever. And you end up just living up to these expectations to a certain extent, just getting nowhere near your potential because someone's told you or someone's knocked you back. And it's just kind of like, actually, it's a load of rubbish. You can adapt and change as you grow. That's the whole point. You can develop a growth mindset, and you can, if you're typically introverted, you can work on being more extrovert, and you can practice that and gain confidence. It's not a problem. Or if you're someone who is really extrovert and kind of like anxiously needs to be doing things all the time, you can learn to sort of calm yourself down and look inwards a little bit more and kind of take a bit more quiet time. You can learn those things. You can change your personality. And he basically says all this stuff about authenticity, how we kind of celebrate being authentic in all our faults and our flaws, and kind of that's just a load of crap. He says that true authenticity is actually living up to your full potential. Your most authentic self is the best version of you, and I really like that. I also really like the fact that he talks about he mentions the upper limit, which is something that Gay Hendricks talks about in his book, The Big Leap, which is a book that I nearly put in the top 5. It's really good. So Benjamin Hardy mentions that. He talks about the upper limit problem and how we get addicted to stress. We get addicted to the stress hormone. So we get used to sort of feeling bad about ourselves. We don't like to feel too happy because we feel as though it's not going to last. So we talk ourselves back out of it and bring ourselves back down. And I think that's really interesting. I think that's a big one for lots of people, for most people. If you can enjoy being successful and happy and actually accept it, then you're kind of halfway there to becoming the person you want to be. So that's fantastic. Great book. The next one is The Wild Card, that isn't strictly a personal development book, but I absolutely love it. It's one of my favourite books of all time. It is Alfred Lansing's Endurance. It's about Shackleton's journey to the Antarctic in 1914 with 27 crew members, where they got stuck in the ice, and you will not believe the ridiculous hardships that they went through for the period of time they went through. And for me, it's personal development, because if you can be that stoic and strong and single-minded to just stay alive and survive, then that is literally probably the most powerful kind of personal development message that you can possibly get, really. So whenever I'm struggling or finding things difficult, I think of them, and it literally makes me shiver with cold to think of the stuff that they went through. They were literally just absolutely contending with it. It's just crazy. I read it after reading the book Mutiny on the Bounty by Peter Fitzsimons. Obviously, Mutiny on the Bounty is a true story, but it's been rewritten and done by different people, and the version by Peter Fitzsimons is just absolutely fantastic. It's so entertaining. It's a long book, but I just really enjoyed it. Just fantastic. So well done. But yeah, it just doesn't get much more old school tough than Shackleton and his team. They're literally just like, I don't know, they're just giants of men. They just must have been hard as coffin nails, basically. I mean, I've run a few marathons over the years, and I walked through South America with my brother, and I felt like I was suffering quite a lot because we're just constantly tired and aching and stuff, and just wanting food and drink and just. But like compared to what these guys did, it's just absolutely nothing. My brother's just a nut job who doesn't feel any pain. He can run he ran a marathon in 2 hours 40 back in the day without even barely any training. He's just got an ability just to not feel pain and just keep going. But I don't have that so much. So yeah, me trying to keep up with him in South America was pretty tough, but obviously nothing like what Shackleton went through. But it's just these little things, these little deals we put ourselves through to try and prove to ourselves how tough we are. And at the time, it's like just not, we don't feel quite so tough. Before we go, we sort of fancy it, and these sort of books inspire us to go and do it. But when we're there actually suffering, it's like, can I just go home now, please? I'm absolutely knackered. So yeah, just crazy sense of perspective that it gives you, really. They suffered from saltwater boils, the sort of things that most modern people would just be like crying about, but they just took it as an everyday thing. They used packed snow as toilet paper, which must have just chafed and rubbed and just caused them so much pain and soreness. It's unbelievable. 100-mile-an-hour winds all the time, and when they got in their little boat to try and find help, they were just dictated to by the wind. The wind brought the cold, the warm, the fish, the animal, the birds, everything. You know, they set their sail by the wind. If it stopped, they were stuck. If it went too much, it was dangerous to see. So they just became absolutely obsessed with the wind. And I think there's a name for it, a menomania, where you're just driven insane by the wind, basically. 80 hours without sleep they went at times. They had to kill their own dogs at one point to eat them because there was just no food left, and they built up relationships with their dogs, so that was horrible. They got chased by a sea leopard that came up out of the water onto the ice. Just absolutely horrendous. But an amazing story, really entertaining as well. And the way the characters are painted as well by Alfred Lansing, just so interesting. Like each one of them just got such a personality in his writing. And he's not overboard or kind of overly exuberant, or he doesn't exaggerate too much. He just lets the story do the talking, but he just writes in a really delicate, sort of just lovely kind of way. Fantastic book. I want to read it again, actually, just talking about it. But such a good one for personal development, whether it's personal development or not. I just can't recommend it enough. So yeah, Shackleton, Tom Crean and 4 others, I think, set off on an 800-mile journey to try and find help. I think that was the nearest landmass they could get to, and it just unbelievable. Just constant cold water on them, salt water and freezing conditions, hardly any water, hardly any food, but they still made it. They survived. Just absolutely crazy, but really good. Final one, number 1, the one book that I personally think is the best personal development book. It's one that I always talk about when I'm coaching people. I always recommend it when I'm coaching. I think it's just really fundamental for people. I think whether you're someone who struggles or whether you're someone who's really successful and you just want to do better, I think this one's really useful. It's Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Now, I didn't want to review this book individually when I read it because it felt somehow disrespectful in a way, which might sound a silly thing to say, but I just felt like that about it. I think when you're talking about things like the Holocaust, concentration camps and stuff, to try and make it sort of entertainment in any way, I just think is a bit wrong, really. Like I say, just disrespectful. That's just how I see it personally. You know, it's a fantastic book. I read it. It's harrowing, but it just gives an amazing kind of sense of perspective. It gives an amazing kind of sense of warmth of what the human character and kind of spirit is capable of in the face of absolute horrendous suffering and difficulty. Viktor Frankl came up with logotherapy, which is kind of talking about how human beings aren't necessarily designed for instant gratification, but to search for meaning. And he says that we don't necessarily have to suffer to find meaning, but we can find meaning in spite of suffering. So even if we're suffering, and he talks about life being suffering in the same way that someone like John Peterson does. So life is suffering, but you can still find meaning. You can still find meaning in your life. You can still do things that are meaningful and purposeful. And that's actually what drives us forward far more than instant gratification. You know, we're kind of tempted by gratifying things on our phone, food, drink, sex, whatever else. There's all sorts of things in the modern world that tempts us for that instant kind of feeling of gratification. But actually happiness is to be found in finding meaning and purpose day to day, having something to wake up for that actually matters. Whether it's your kids or working for people who are struggling, helping other people, your job, whatever it is, whatever it is you're doing that's making the world a better place, hopefully. So that to me is the most important message in personal development. You can be successful with money, you can be successful and famous, fit, healthy, whatever you want. But if you don't have any meaning in your life, unless you've got something missing in your brain, you're probably not going to be very happy. Narcissists, sociopaths, people like that, they might be okay, possibly. But most of us need to have meaning and purpose in order to feel any kind of happiness or sense of satisfaction day to day. We have to have something that counts, that makes us feel as though we count in some ways, or someone that is counting on us in some way. So this is just a hugely important book. It's really harrowing, it's horrible, but amazing at the same time. And those are my top 5. I will probably do another one in a year or so's time potentially, and it may change again. I think that's one that will definitely always be in there. The other books I think are fantastic. If you are serious about personal development, follow me on Facebook at Maguire Total Coaching. I'm always putting content on there. I do webinars from time to time on more specific subjects. I've got my own business, training and consultancy, which I'm doing very well with my wife, and I'm growing that. So yeah, I'm just really keen and passionate about personal development. I'm really keen to improve myself and reach my own potential, but to help other people as well. So yeah, basically watch this space, and see you again soon. Cheers.